and welcome to Santa Barbara Newsmakers. I'm your host, Jerry Roberts. Today's program is part of our special series of interviews with the candidates to be Santa Barbara's next mayor. Our guest today is City Council member Frank Hotchkiss, a Renaissance man who came to Santa Barbara in the late 90s. He has worked here as a realtor, but his career canon also has included employment as a public relations executive, an actor, and film buffs will recall him as the CHP officer in the 1970s Chris Christopherson vehicle Cisco Pike, and most recently the author of a sexy page-turner called Playing with Fire. First elected to council in 2009, he was re-elected citywide in 2013 and is now termed out. Thank you very much for joining us and welcome.
Great intro.
Okay, my first duty is to try to help you sell books.
Oh, great.
So I'm gonna just read a few excerpts here from Playing with Fire, and then I have a key question.
Yes.
Jet black hair fell over a lipstick red dress cut just above the knee. He saw her legs outlined beneath the tight wool dress. Her tan calf muscles rippled over red patent leather heels as she stood with legs close together. Her delicate perfume made him struggle to breathe. All right. What everybody wants to know, is this autobiographical?
Good question. No, although I've certainly seen ladies that beautiful, but I tell a little bit of the story. A guy your age, my age, inadvertently, although happily married, falls in love with a wonderfully striking young woman, but knows right away that it's stupid, shouldn't do it, shouldn't pursue it, he's not going to do that, they'll just be friends. And that's when, as you know, he discovers he's playing with fire. Complications
ensue.
They do.
All right, Playing with Fire, available at Chaucer's. Don't get it on Amazon. Support local business.
Absolutely. Tecolote also has it.
Tecolote. All right. Just real quickly, so your career as an actor, that was kind of an interesting time in your life. What was it like working with Chris Christopherson and Dennis Hopper and so on?
Well, I didn't have a scene with Hopper. Christopherson was pretty much as laid back as you'd think he was. I had a little bit of
feel. It was dope. It was about weed.
Yeah, it was a ton.
Cisco Pike.
I don't think anybody was. Well, I don't remember anybody smoking on the set, but they half of them acted like it, you know. So for me, it was an early chance to at a really good brief but good role, and it I was excited about it.
It was an exciting time. The 70s.
Yeah, and I did 13 different roles in 1 year. I had friends telling me, yeah, my God, what are you doing, man? This is great, you know. Got to work with some really interesting people. I told you Milton Berle, who was quite a good actor and very conscientious. And some of these guys that are big shots, you know, when you're doing a shot and they don't have to be in it, they'll just disappear. He wouldn't. He would go and stand behind the camera so you could play to him. And that was quite nice. That was a very considerate thing to do.
All right, and we're not going to talk about the nude scene that you did when Sal Mineo was directing because it's just too much. Well,
that's
come
a
back
joke.
And talk about that sometime. All right, we're going to put up a card here for our viewers, and we took this from the city charter. And what it shows is the specific powers of the mayor, which are not great. And we hear a lot of promises in the mayor's race, and we talk a lot about this, but basically you wield the gavel at city council meetings, you get a vote, but you don't have any veto power, official head of the city for ceremonial purposes, so ribbon cuttings and funerals, and then these two things, you have primary responsibility for interpreting policies, programs, and needs of the city government to the people. So what that tells me is the real power of the mayor is one of communication, that it's invested as a bully pulpit. And so I want to focus on your skills in doing that as I ask you these questions about some of the issues that are facing it and how you can bring those to bear on carrying out the agenda that you have. First of all, I want to read a little something. I want to talk about housing. Our friend Randy Alcorn wrote an op-ed in Newshawk the other day, and he says, there is no housing crisis in Santa Barbara, and there is no shortage of affordable housing. What there is are too many people who want to live here for a price they can afford. And there are the forces of greed all too eager to profit by building a few affordable units, along with many more new market rate units. If Santa Barbara housing is unaffordable, why are housing selling quickly at full or near asking price? Who's buying them? People who can afford them, and that's who. You agree with those sentiments?
I do. I read that, and I thought Randy's one of the few people that I think, actually, painful as it is, has it right. I mean, we have always been an exorbitantly expensive place to have housing. You go back 30 years, they were talking about a housing crisis then. I think crisis is the wrong word. Well, crisis is when people have been turned out of their houses and are wandering around the streets. That's not what's happening here. We always will have a housing challenge. Affordable housing is probably an oxymoron as a term. I mean, I can afford the house that I got. I could afford it 20 years ago. I'm not sure I could afford it today. So does that make me a victim? No, that means that's just the way it is. And not everybody, although maybe would like to, everybody's going to be able to live here. So when we start talking about affordable housing, I think it's a little bit pushing water uphill. There are two ways to get into the housing market. One is, particularly if you're a younger person, you start renting and save up little by little, and then hopefully can buy someplace. Maybe you start buying Ventura, make gains there, sell, then you buy in Santa Barbara. Same with Lompoc or whatever. The other way is you get family assistance, which a lot of people do.
So, but despite your view, your perspective that it's really market forces and it's market driven, the government, the city government's trying to do a lot to encourage both rental and so-called affordable housing.
Particularly rental.
And that's the AUD program, the average unit size density program.
Right. And that's been successful. Still, though, it's expensive.
3,000. It's over 3,000 bucks.
Well, some of them are less, but still, it's always going to be expensive. As I said, it's an oxymoron for Santa Barbara. So, I don't think that the city should be, let's just stick with the city. I don't think the city should be paying for someone's housing. By that I mean underwriting their housing. For instance, there's going to be, I think, before the council soon, so-called inclusionary housing, which means you have units that sell whatever.
We'll talk about those.
And then you've got a little unit tucked in there that is, going to market for far less. I think that creates an awkward situation for people. You know, if you can't afford where you're living, then you can't afford where you're going to live. So I wouldn't do that. And it's also, if somebody buys that, it also restricts the ultimate profit they can make with appreciation.
But the AUD program has generated rental housing and more than in a long time. But I think people were shocked, including people at City Hall, about how much was in the pipeline, how quickly it was approved, also the rents, and also the size of these things. So the council this week modified that. They voted for some modification to require more parking and to put a cap on it. You voted for that.
Yes.
Why? Why, particularly the cap, why do you think that that's a good idea?
Well, it's contradictory to the pure housing concept. It's for me anyway, trying to limit growth in Santa Barbara to a sort of slow growth, tap the brakes philosophy so that we don't flood the city with more people and more cars than we really want here. You know, we are 90,000, and we've been that pretty much for 10 years. And still, traffic's gotten a little bit worse, I think. And there are more cars parked on the street. I would like to, I originally, along with Dale Francisco, wanted to have exactly what we approved this last week, which was more off-street parking per unit. Now, the reason Bendy White argued against that, he's correct, is that
Who's also running for mayor.
Who's also running for mayor. Good guy. The reason he didn't want to do that is he felt that would jack up the price and the cost of housing. In other words, you took away the space that you could use for housing units and you gave it to a car. Well, that's true, except that almost everybody, if they have a family, has two cars. Even younger people start with only one. The minute you have a family, you got two cars.
So the apartment cap to you is really a parking issue, keeping the cars off it.
Yeah, keeping it down, and also making it. See, if people move in and you got two people are married, move in, they're only get one parking space. Does that mean somebody gives up their job? No, of course not. It means that they're going to park their car somewhere else.
All right. So let's talk about the ADUs, the granite units, the accessory dwelling units.
Right,
program.
imposition from the state.
We got AUDs and ADUs. It's
Very
find some
confusing.
more initials, will you?
Yeah.
So the city really has no choice but to do this. It's a state mandate. So, but what would you do as mayor to ensure that granny units don't overwhelm the neighborhoods? What would be your perspective on that?
I'm not sure I have a good answer for that. Because there's some neighborhoods that absolutely don't want it, and there are other neighborhoods that do. So, and we haven't explored that at all at the city level, and I certainly haven't. I think in the Lower East Side they would probably be for it. On the Upper East they wouldn't. How that can be limited, I'm not sure. The city is now examining, because I've read the law. It's not crystal clear, I can tell you, the way these guys write it. That what the limitations are on parking, they to some degree depend on how near a transportation corridor you are, bus fare or whatever. So I think we're trying to sort through and see, at least right now.
So maybe a little around the margins, but really not a lot of, the city doesn't have a lot of authority to slow it down.
And of course, the interesting thing was when the state guys who wrote that, the senator came down and explained it, and I asked him, I said, we want to preserve our neighborhoods, and he said, well, I don't care. I thought, well, that's an interesting perspective for a politician.
Yeah.
And that ticked off a lot of people, me included. So I think there's going to be some pushback legally on this. And it's probably just accruing now.
One more question on housing, and that's about vacation rentals. Who is Max Mironoff?
Don't know.
The fellow who was before the council who wanted to, who went through the whole rigmarole of permitting process to have his one unit approved as a vacation rental and wasn't allowed to. Where are you on that whole thing?
Well, I think he got a bad deal, and the reason is that in certain areas, R4 and C2 zoning areas, sorry to get technical here.
Residential and small, low impact commercial.
Well, R4, yeah, but not what's called R1 or 2 or 3. In other words, most neighborhoods, residential neighborhoods. You are allowed, if you go through the city process, to have a short-term rental.
Except nobody will allow it, because then.
Well, that's the part that upsets me, and Randy Rouse joins me in this. If we say to people, yes, you can do this, yes, it's an onerous process, but go for it. And then when it comes to the city council, we go like, oh, sorry, no.
So you voted in favor of allowing him to
Yes, absolutely, because he's playing, he's following the rules. He's playing the game as he's supposed to. And then I don't want to move the goal line just because he gets to it.
Do you philosophically have a problem overall with the city saying to people, property owners, no, you can't do that with your property. You're not allowed to have a vacation rental.
Well, I know, I said that, and I voted originally for that along with unanimously, the whole city council, that in R1 areas, R2, I think, and I guess all of us say, that vacation rentals, short-term rentals are verboten because you're having a commercial venture next to your house, and you bought your house to be in a residential neighborhood. One of the deciding factors for me was, as a realtor, is that if I'm going to sell your home, you asked me to sell your home, that's fine, and next door to it is one of these short-term rentals, by law, you and I are required to tell any prospective buyer of your home, by the way, next door I've got a short-term rental. In other words, it has an effect on the value of your home.
But wouldn't it also increase the value of my home potentially, because I would be able to do the same thing if I.
No.
Why not?
Well, because we didn't pass a law, we just enforced the existing law. So we don't want to turn, at least I feel, what I'm working for is, we don't want to turn residential neighborhoods into competing commercial ventures.
All right, okay.
I can see you don't agree, but if I.
You can tell?
But if I paid
But here's the argument that bothers me about this is
go ahead.
saying, oh, this is, if you have vacation rentals, you're taking long-term rental housing off the market. I don't buy that. Do you?
That's not the argument that echoes with me. To me, it's the having people moving in and moving out, 3 or 4 times a month next door.
So
you never know your neighbor then
nuisance
either.
for neighbors.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's talk about State Street.
Yeah.
How would you describe the current economic and physical conditions of downtown State Street?
On the 400 and 500 blocks, there are too many vacancies. They won't be there very long. There's already some moving in. People attribute that to a number of factors. It's probably a little bit, some people get upset, or at least there's a rumor of always having transients down there. It's not entirely true. If you haven't been able to make money on your business and you're having to pay a rent that's too high, you're going to bail out. And those competing forces of the landlord naturally wanting to get the most that he can, and the retailer trying to get a rate that he can support, those are always in tension. And until they make up their minds and adjust accordingly, we're going to have them. I don't think that government ought to do anything about it other than provide the best ambience for people there, safety and cleanliness, et cetera.
So do you think that the whole narrative of there being a crisis about State Street, the sky is falling, you think that's overblown?
I do. And it's just, if you look at the numbers, there are most, 80, 90% of the businesses on State Street are businesses on State Street. So if you got 10%, it's that one particular, those 2 blocks, you really notice it. Yeah, that's going to, I hope that will take care of itself, and I think it will.
You've embraced the title of the law and order candidate in this. What does that mean in terms of panhandling, aggressive panhandling, and vagrancy on State Street? What are you going to do about that?
Well, I told the chief when she said, well, we don't want to create, because I asked her that question, said, we don't want to create an atmosphere of bullying. I said, wait a minute, you're going to let these guys bully you? And there was this dead silence. I could tell, well, she's never going to like me. But that is the point. I think that, interestingly, the next week, we suddenly had more police on State Street that week. And we've gotten 5 or 6 so-called gray shirts, who are retired officers volunteering. So the only thing that I think is going to help that is increased police presence in one way or another. And because really, anybody can be on State Street. It's conduct we're talking about. We don't want people, I don't think you do, being offensive, swearing loudly, doing rude things, whatever, that kind of conduct, I don't care if you're in a Brioni suit or rags, that doesn't go. So that's what we're talking about.
Have you seen that problem increase considerably over the last 5 to 10 years?
No, I haven't. And I think that to some degree, State Street suffers from a bad reputation. It's like, I better not draw that comparison. But
oh, go ahead. Yeah. What is it like?
Yeah. It's like somebody who gets a loose reputation and doesn't deserve it. It's almost impossible to lose. So it's been with State Street, because the people that repeat that are the ones that never go down there. I would never go down there. Why? Oh, it's full of what? Well, if you've never been down there, how do you know?
It's full of tourists.
Yeah.
What should we do with the Macy's?
Here's another thing. This is sort of good, I thought. 2 days ago, I was driving up State Street slowly. I can't remember. I don't think it was a weekend. And there were a lot of young families with young kids. I thought, well, this is great. I love that. That's proof to me that it's not what people fear.
But are they locals? They're not locals.
Couldn't tell. Well, no way to tell. I just want people down there to enjoy it. And I do like the idea of now trying to make it possible, or making it possible, for rental housing to invest in State Street.
So some of your opponents say that's what we ought to do with Macy's. What do you think we ought to do with Macy's?
I don't know how, that'd be great if we could do it. I think it'd be really expensive. I hope a developer could figure that out, because it could be a wonderful location, really.
Isn't the fundamental problem that retail is dead or dying, and that we I mean, investing in retail, sort of trying to see that as our future is a bad course?
Well, if it's a bad course, business people are going to make that decision on their own, not the city. Yes, retail is changing, but it's still changing. It's evolving. For instance, a couple of months ago, I was at a boring meeting, pulled out my Android phone, plugged into the internet, needed to get a wallet, Googled it, found the wallet, and bought it for $100. And put my phone away and continued trying to listen to the boring meeting. So that's an example of, obviously how the internet is so incredible. On the other hand, there are things that you cannot do on the internet. You can't eat or drink on the internet. So we've got terrific bars and restaurants up and down State Street. And there are other things where you just want to get your hands on something. And there are some furniture stores that have survived very well.
So again, let the market sort it out.
Yeah, and the reason is, rather than have a few people at the top trying to make a decision, 1,000 people, just normal people like you and me, making the decision comes up with a much better answer.
All right. Speaking of retail, there's a 1 cent sales tax increase proposal that's going to be on the ballot, along with the mayoral balloting. Are you urging voters to support that?
No, I'm the only guy not saying no, and I'm saying no really strongly for a couple of reasons. A, in just gross dollar amounts, it'll be the biggest tax increase we as a city have ever done. $22 million a year is what's expected. We've had higher percentage increases, but they haven't brought anywhere near the kind of money we're talking about here. And secondly, the control of that is non-existent, although people are saying, well, we weren't going to use it for roads and the new police station. That's just not true.
And when you say it's non-existent, you mean that it does not specify in the measure itself what the money's going to go for?
Not only that, it can't. If it specified what the money would go for, it would have to be a 2/3 vote. So if we get even too close, I haven't seen the wording in the ballot, but if it's too close to hinting that, oh, this is just going to go for this and this, it'll be illegal. It'll be challenged.
So there's no way that voters can be assured that that's what it's going to go for.
No, and this is, this is the difficulty of doing it this way. I know that the people in the city council now are sincere in saying it'll go for this and this. The lifespan of that city council is, you know how long? 4 months. So in 4 months, we're going to have a different council. In 28 months, we'll have an entirely different council. So the concerns that people have now and who are there are going to be entirely different, or could be entirely different down the line. So that's why I say we really have no control of it, and it's kind of wishful thinking. We'll put it in the hopper, and hopefully we'll spend it that way.
So you're against it?
I am.
Okay.
I am.
Let me ask you another financial question. The annual financial report, 2016 annual financial report, shows the city with an unfunded liability for pensions of about $250 million, 249 something. And of course, there's going to be increasing contributions to CalPERS of millions of dollars a year for the next few years. I know there have been some modest attempts to deal with this, but it's a big problem. It's a huge problem going forward. What do you propose to do about that?
Yeah, but we have done some curative things, and they've been pretty successful, and that is asking staff who are part of CalPERS to make greater contributions to their own retirement and not do what the city agreed to before. So we're moving towards 12% as opposed to 6, 8, 9 that we used to do. 12%
but
of
not
people.
Not the unions. Not the
No,
public
we're going to get everybody up to, particularly police and fire, up to 12%. So they are going to be sharing much more of the burden for their retirement than right now they are, or they're in the process of doing that. And
so do those two lines cross at some point?
eventually down the line, yeah, down the way. It's a little bit off, and a little bit depends also on how CalPERS itself performs on the market. Hadn't been good in the past. But those two lines are getting closer. It's the best way to say
So
it.
you're comfortable with the pension system the way it is now? You don't think it's in need of any further changes?
No, let's see how it goes.
All right.
Okay.
Let me ask you something about immigration. We're running short on time, but I want to ask you about Senate Bill 54, the so-called sanctuary state bill.
Right.
That would extend many of the protections that exist in so-called sanctuary cities. Sheriff Brown says, among others, we're going to end up protecting criminals, people who are here illegally and also commit crimes. Where are you on this? You for it or against it?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I'm actually broader even than Sheriff Brown. I mean, to me, the reason the United States is such an enviable place to come to for people all over the world, we're a nation of laws. And we set those laws, and whether we like them or not, we try to follow them. So if somebody comes up here and their first act is to break one of those laws, you start wondering, wait a minute, are you really want to be part of the American system? And then once you break that law, you're going to have to break others. You have to get a social security number illegally. You got to do a lot of things illegally. It really puts people in a kind of awkward position right away just to start off that way.
So you're the only Republican in the race, which gives you a solid political base to start with in a race with five candidates. Do you agree with the Trump administration's execution of the immigration laws to date?
I'm not sure what the administration's execution of those laws has been, and I think that's been changing also. But let me just continue the way I was going, if I could.
We got
We got 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
Okay. So people that come here illegally, if you want to stay here and become an American, I would get an attorney and go through the hoops and learn everything and, get your English down and do it all right. And if you're not interested in staying, then realize you're probably going to have to leave one way or the other, maybe willfully, hopefully. So I want people to live happily legally here.
All right.
In every way.
So we'll put you down as a no on the sanctuary state bill, SB 54.
Oh, yeah, capital N, capital O.
All right. Well, thanks very much to our guest today, Frank Hotchkiss, and thanks to all our loyal viewers for checking in online and on TVSB's Channel 17. To watch the complete set of our interviews with mayoral candidates, check out our new website, newsmakerswithjerryroberts.com, and look for the return of our Newsmakers panel of journalists starting September 7th. Thanks today also to our director, JP Montalvo, our marketing director, Maggie Mabucci, our crew, Mark Melson, Debbie DeRoos, Paloma Lamb, and to our attorneys, Dewey Cheatham and Howe, and as always, our senior high-ranking executive producer, Hap Freund. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Newsmakers.